Donald Trump says a lot of things. They're not very consistent. They change by the hour. And Russia is winning on the battlefield. And it's stated its positions quite clearly about the territorial issues, the neutrality of Ukraine, the end of NATO enlargement. While not everything that the Russians have said will come to pass in an agreement, they do constitute the core of what will be agreed. Trump, fancies himself as a deal maker, so he puts pressure on, he makes threats, he does bluffs, he changes his mind, he says how much he likes the person, then how he is disappointed by the person, then threatens the person. This is standard behavior. We see it every day on almost every issue. But the fact of the matter is, if you look beneath the surface, you can see the contours of what the U.S. should agree with Russia. First, that the U.S. should stop arming Ukraine over a useless and destructive war, that Ukraine should be neutral, that this NATO business, this enlargement of NATO, never should have happened, never should have been threatened, never should have been a provocation. And yes, that there will be some territorial exchange as a result of this, which also has a long and detailed history. For example, the two provinces of eastern Ukraine, called the Donbass, were subject to a treaty in 2015 called the Minsk II Agreement, where Russia and those provinces said, look, they will stay within Ukraine, but Ukraine should give them political rights because these are Russian-speaking regions. And the United States and Ukraine said, no, we're not going to do that, even though they signed the agreement. So from the Russian side, they just see a lot of tricks, a lot of U.S. Duplicity, actually. We don't hear too much about that in our media.
Honestly, you've got to shake your head here. What we're hearing is essentially an argument that U.S. diplomacy has been unstable, inconsistent, and at times outright deceptive. To my knowledge, there is a pattern of broken assurances, particularly around NATO expansion and agreements like Minsk. I mean, if we're being serious, this back and forth damages credibility in negotiations. When one side feels lied to repeatedly, no wonder they dig in harder. It's not about liking Russia. It's about understanding why mistrust has calcified.
But the U.S. once upon a time in 1990 told the Russians NATO won't even enlarge at all eastward. Then they cheated on that. The United States signed with the Soviet Union the anti-ballistic missile treaty. Then the United States left that. Then the United States pushed NATO to enlarge to Ukraine over strident Russian objections. Then the United States helped to overthrow a government in Ukraine in 2014. Russia didn't like that very much. Then the United States said, oh, you don't have to honor this Minsk II agreement. Russia didn't much like that. Then Russia and Ukraine came close to signing a peace agreement in April 2022, and the United States under Biden said, no, 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 don't sign it.
Wait a second, are you kidding me right now? If it's true the U.S. discouraged Kiev from signing a peace deal, that's deeply troubling. From what I've seen, such interventions prolong conflict rather than resolve it. And the economic and human costs? Astronomical. This whole situation is ridiculous. On one hand, Washington preaches stability. On the other, it actively undermines off-ramps. That's not strategy, that's recklessness.
All right. So this is a little tiresome, The Russians aren't just feeling in a great mood. They didn't fight this war out of their desire. They fought it after provocation came their way. And that's not being an apologist for Russia. That's just trying to explain why the war came and how it needs to end. Well, if there's a very public agreement on principles, and it's signed by Russia and the United States, it can be trusted. What's happened up until now is that things aren't put on paper or statements are made. But if things are made very clear, then I think it's possible. And especially, things should be made clear. They should also be supported by the rest of the UN Security Council. Everyone should understand this war needs to end. You get the whole kind of world community through the UN saying, yeah, okay, these terms, this is the basis of it. If someone cheats, we're going to know which one did it. Not he said, he said, he said, but rather put it clearly.
Let me pause and think this through. He's arguing that formal, public, and multilateral agreements provide accountability. In theory, yes. In practice, I mean, history suggests otherwise. Paper alone doesn't stop cheating. To my knowledge, treaties hold only if interests align. Still, clarity and transparency matter. The call for UN Security Council involvement is smart. More eyes make it harder for either side to wriggle out unnoticed.
Of course, that takes some skill. You need diplomats. You can't just do it on True Social. You can't just say, I'm threatening you. You must do this in 24 hours. I give you 10 days. I punish you if you don't do this. I'm disappointed. You're a bad person. This is not how to run a government. Sorry. We need diplomats. We need negotiated documents. We need the public understanding. Trump, a normal president, frankly, would give a speech to the American people explaining the context, the history. This is how you actually solve problems. It takes a little bit more care than a True Social post. I don't know if we're going to get more than that, but that's what it needs.
Well, he's not wrong here. This is exactly the problem with Trump's style, governing like a reality TV host. Diplomacy isn't tweets, threats, or shifting moods. It's slow, structured negotiation. Honestly, it's laughable to think global conflicts can be managed through bluster and ultimatums. The economic fallout of such amateur tactics. It risks trade shocks, instability in markets, and unnecessary uncertainty.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that what was really interesting to me, I saw a speech that you gave not too long ago at the European Parliament.
Yes.
And very gutsy speech. And I just remember the looks on some of their faces. They were just like, what is he telling? What is he saying here? But you were advocating for peace and you were telling them, we need to end it. We need to stop it. Like, don't send any more weapons, etc.
Yeah.
What was the reception like in the room after that speech? Like, did any of the European politicians, did any of them approach you, or how did that go afterwards?
Well, I told them, instead of all this war, why don't you pick up the phone and call the Russian counterparts? Actually, maybe even fly to Moscow or have them fly to Brussels or Rome or some other place. And that room was a little bit self-selected, meaning they knew that I was speaking and they chose to come there. So I wasn't imposed on them. So there were a lot of friendly faces in that room, but it circulated widely in Brussels afterwards. And there were others that were not so happy with what I said because I told them, you're not doing your job. What is all the Russia hate? Okay, that's not going to get you security. That's not going to get you peace.
I mean, this is awkward, isn't it? Calling out European politicians directly takes guts, but he's right. Demonizing Russia doesn't equal security. From an economic analyst's lens, hostility without dialogue leads to prolonged costs, higher energy prices, fractured trade flows, greater defense spending. And Europe, heavily dependent on imports, especially energy, pays dearly for every escalatory posture. The refusal to pick up the phone borders on negligence.
The way to get peace is to talk to the other side. At least try. They don't even try. Until today, by the way. That's how ineffective I was. They still don't pick up the phone. And then they complain, America's negotiating without us. And I tell them, you don't have to wait for the United States to make a phone call, for God's sake. You pick up the phone. You go meet. They don't do that yet. It's really weird, actually. Weird is the only word I can give, a precise account of this. They're afraid. They don't have their own self-confidence. They are so used to depending on the United States. They believe their own rhetoric. I don't know what it is completely, but what they should do is open diplomacy with Russia and discuss these issues. Actually, I say that the war has been going on for 11 years because I put the date to February 2014 when this started. It was at a lower level, but thousands of people were killed between 2014 and 2022. So I think that this has been going on for quite a while. I think Tucker did a great job making this interview. It was a very interesting interview in addition. But we have a bad idea that you don't talk to the other side. But this is really wrong. If you don't talk to the other side, of course, it's a little bit easier if you want to spin propaganda, but it's not a way to make peace or to settle issues or to understand the other side. We attribute motives to the other side that are just wrong. This is my own experience. I talk with the Russians, I talk with the Chinese, I talk all over the world, and I hear both sides or the multiple sides of an argument, and it's very helpful to understand because different perspectives are quite real. They're not just put out there for spin. People have different views of things, and we need to relearn the idea of diplomacy. And with diplomacy, part of the idea is you actually listen to the other side, not making faces and saying, you're an idiot, you're a liar, how dare you, but actually listen and then respond, and they have to listen, and then you respond. It's pretty basic, but we teach our kids that, but we don't necessarily see that in our presidents. But anyway, they're going to meet now, so maybe something good will happen. So I don't want to prejudge, but I don't think that you can solve this on Truth Social.
I don't think so either. And also, when it comes to the other side, if we can pivot to economics for just a second, the tariffs, which I did try to warn people about when Trump re-entered the White House at the beginning of this year, that would impact us here in the United States as well. I don't know if this is Donald Trump trying to make some macho man move or whatever. But at this point, if I'm just looking at the data, China is soaring. They are rising.
Let's be serious here. The data doesn't lie. China is outpacing the U.S. in many areas, from infrastructure to manufacturing dominance. This whole trade war and tariff obsession feels misguided. Instead of scapegoating China, we should reflect on why U.S. productivity growth is stagnating. To my knowledge, blaming foreigners won't fix crumbling airports or declining education quality. That's on us, not Beijing.
I don't think we can fault them for that. I just see them, that is a competitor. And it's interesting, a number of people who support free market and capitalism, they don't support that, though.
Yeah,
So
that's very good. I've been going to China since 1981, so that's 44 years. And it went from an impoverished country to a booming country. And they worked hard on this, by the way. You could physically see with your own eyes how hard they were working, because sometimes you'd go to a place, I'd be driven to a place late at night, and the construction would be going on these buildings by torchlight almost in the middle of the night. In other words, they were building their country 24 hours around the clock for years, and they had a great success. And we shouldn't denigrate them for that. By the way, trading with China has been very good for most Americans, not for every American. If you're in a line of business where China's very successfully exporting the products you make at a lower price, you'll get hurt. If you're a consumer of those goods, you're benefited. The basic idea of trade is not that every single person benefits, but that we have a society in which we use taxes and training programs and education and public investment to make sure that net everybody comes out ahead. But we don't do that. We just say, if someone's hurting in our country, First of all, our politicians are so bad. They don't take any care about people that are hurting. But what they do say is, oh, China did that. So they try to blame it on others without taking any responsibility themselves for doing the basic things that would make life better for Americans. So the whole name of the game is blame it on foreigners, blame it on others, don't take responsibility for fixing things in our own country. That's the big problem.
Exactly. This hits the nail on the head. The China stole our jobs narrative is lazy politics. The real story is Washington's refusal to cushion workers during globalization. We could have invested in retraining, infrastructure, and safety nets, but instead politicians chose tax cuts and endless wars. This mess is unbelievable. Economically, we had the tools to soften globalization's blows. We just didn't use them.
Oh, bravo. You got it exactly right. And we can put some numbers on it. You know, the United States is 335 million people. European Union is 450 million people. So you add it together, that's 800 million people. The world's 8 billion people. So if you take the US and Europe, we're one tenth of the world population. If you add in, you know, other friends, so add in Canada, Britain, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, the ones that we call the US alliance, it comes to 12% of the world population. Maybe if you take a big expanded list, 15%. What about the other 85% of the world?
Hold on, think about this scale for a moment. The West is 10-15% of the world's population, yet it behaves like it's the whole show. That's delusional. Countries like India, China, Brazil, these aren't secondary markets. They are central players now. The economic reality is multipolar. Acting like emperors just alienates partners and accelerates de-dollarization trends. It's short-sighted arrogance.
Just India and China by themselves is nearly 40%. And so I say exactly what you're saying, which is, oh, we think we're so big, powerful. Trump thinks I can make demands of anybody. And the rest of the world saying, huh? Who is this guy? Yeah, we don't want to cross the U.S. We'd like to have normal relations, but get us to bow down? No, thank you. Get us to make agreements that are not in our interest? No, thank you. And the president of Brazil, who I adore, President Lula, said the most clear, explicit thing. He said, we don't need an emperor. So he said, look, we want to have normal relations with the U.S., but we don't need Emperor Donald. We don't need an American empire. Don't make demands, and we can have normal relations. Yeah, it's very interesting. I travel a lot, and because countries that were poor 20 years ago have been built up tremendously fast in the last 20 or 25 years. So if you go to an airport elsewhere, you say, whoa, this is dazzling. If you come back to our airports, well, they're being rehabbed a bit, but you feel like you're back in the 1950s. My wife and I joke that we know we're back in America because the elevator doesn't work, the walkway doesn't work, staircase doesn't work, people are yelling at you. So we need to invest. This is how you get ahead. We need to spend money on not war, but on modernizing our country.
This part really stings. He's dead right. $7 trillion blown on wars while our infrastructure collapses. To my knowledge, no advanced economy can thrive long-term without investing in physical capital and human capital. Instead, we hand tax cuts to billionaires and neglect the basics. Bridges fall apart, trains stall, airports feel third world. This is not just bad economics. It's national self-sabotage.
And we haven't done that. We have spent $7 trillion on wars. Since 2001, basically, we went to war after war after war after war. It's terrible. What a waste. We gave huge tax cuts to people who have so much money that they don't know what to do with it. And then we say, oh, there's no money in the budget for modernization or for protecting the environment or for taking care of nature. So we're making a lot of bad choices. We just had one big ugly bill called One Big Beautiful Bill. What was the point of this thing? First, it was a backroom operation, never debated, never discussed, filled with the hidden gifts to the rich that I don't even know about because, you only learn about these things in some page and hundreds of pages into a document way late. But it was a secret operation. The main point of the operation was tax cuts for the rich. And the main way to not balance the tax cuts, because they didn't even come close, this is a gusher of more red ink, but the main response was cut the health care of America's poorest people.
Are you kidding me with this? Tax cuts for billionaires balanced by gutting health care for the poorest. If that's not policy failure, I don't know what is. This whole situation is absurd. From an economist's perspective, redistribution should work downward to stabilize society, not upward into the pockets of the already ultra-wealthy. It's no wonder public trust erodes when decisions look this corrupt.
Could this possibly be fair? Would we ever, in an open day, if we had a real discussion and things were really debated and deliberated by the American people, would we ever come to this? If we had a room of 1,000 Americans randomly selected, not paid for by lobbyists, but put into a room from all over the country and told, you can deliberate about the future of the United States. You can get any data you want. You can ask anybody you want their opinions. But in the end, you vote. Would they ever in a million years vote the One Big Beautiful Bill? No, nothing like it. They would say, Elon, pay some taxes. Come on, you have $300 billion, pay some taxes. They would say that to Bezos. They would say that to others high on the list. You add the top 18 or so billionaires, they've got something like 3 trillion of wealth. Pay some taxes so that the elevators work and the walkways work and it's not just a broken down mess outside our homes.
Honestly, this line made me laugh, but bitterly. Imagine average citizens simply asking billionaires to pay their share so elevators work. That's how degraded expectations have become. Instead of dreaming big, we're begging for basic functionality. To my knowledge, strong states tax their wealthy fairly and reinvest in public goods. We're doing the opposite, undercutting the future for short-term elite gain.